Travel.
Yeah. So I think, yeah, it sounded to me like he has a lot of court cases and stuff that he's working on, and it sounds like work's been really busy since January. So,
Yeah.
you know, and we wanted to get it done, I think, as soon
So
as
we are approved for 12 meetings a year.
hold on one second. This is
Sounds
there.
like somebody.
Yes, I'm playing with different things right now because I had to launch the YouTube live stream, and so that then feeds back. But now you're not hearing it now, are you?
I don't hear it. No
Okay.
feedback.
All right, great. So, yeah, so we'll see. It's
Nope.
good
Okay.
to see.
I'll be back. What do I owe you for today?
I don't know, I haven't figured it out, but that either can be wired 120 or 240. Pure storage. One breaker, it's about $16 more for the breaker, but it's more efficient on 240.
Let's do
So
that.
that's where you're, okay.
Yeah. Yeah, that would be it. Okay. Got it. Okay. Yeah, I have my two electricians here today.
Oh, goodness.
Yes, they're so efficient.
Well,
And
that's good.
everything worked out really good, he said. So no surprises in the walls.
Well, that's really good, right?
Well, it's a new house. Well, a new house to us. It was built like in 2009.
Hmm.
Um, but the man built it himself. So you always wonder, what did he skip for corners? Well,
Well, it sounds like he didn't, so that's good for you guys.
no, no, he didn't. He didn't where it mattered. So next is the plumber that's going to come in, and then the tiler, and then the contractor. So, in what order, I don't know. So,
That sounds like a lot of work being done at your house.
it was a bathroom that had one of those jacuzzi tubs, and it wasn't something
You
that
wanted.
practical. So,
Yeah.
so we're going with a straight tub and a shower combination and tile, and I don't know what else. Who knows? So,
Bathrooms are expensive too.
well, we did the shopping ourselves. We
Hmm.
actually found our tile in Portland, and it was perfect. And it was like, price wise, I couldn't complain. My faucets, my shower head, my faucets are the ones that cost the most. It's like, so we kind of, it was that cost the most. That the faucets and the shower head and all the things that go cost more than the bathtub itself. So I'm very, but I mean, it's not something I can fool around with. So
No, I wouldn't.
no, no. But yeah, so I think I have everything they need, possibly everything they need. They just have to, like he did today. He just came here and everything was right here. So we did a little homework beforehand and shopped what they needed. I'm exhausted. So I'm ready for it to end. But good things take a while, I guess.
It takes a while to find a contractor nowadays too. Those are hard to find.
Yeah, I've got one, and he came with his own electrician. He comes with his own plumber, and he comes with the tile guy.
Well, that's nice.
Yeah, so the contractor will do what he has to do, and everybody else is scheduled. Oh, hi, Brian.
Hey, how are
How
you?
are you? Looks like you had a haircut, Brian.
Yeah, well, once in a while I have to, right?
Yeah, every 6 months, right?
Uh, a little more often than that, but
Hey,
This
listen,
time
let
of
me-
year, I should cut it right off short. Stays
no,
cooler.
don't do that. Oh, no, my grandsons just had their hair shaved. And it's like, oh my God, their beautiful curls are gone. And it's like, I can't say anything because they're still adorable as hell. But, it's just, it's like, oh my God, I love their little hair, but no. Hey, Brian, I have a question for you. There seems like when you go to, we were at Father Rawls Cemetery yesterday, St. Sebastian and Madison. Looks
Yeah.
like they pulled up the tracks. And what is there now? Is that an ATV trail or what is it?
Yeah, that's the Kennebec Valley Trail. So, it's multi-use ATV, bicycle, whatever in the summer, snowmobile, cross-country skiing in the winter. It runs from Oakland all the way to Bingham.
Holy sheesh. And that includes a bridge over the Norwalk, right?
Over the river in Norwalk, yes. We converted that bridge, the one in Madison, the one in Anson. Those are the three
Oh,
big
yeah.
ones.
Those are
But
the
there was
big
a
ones.
total of 11 bridges. But the
I
three
can
big
go
ones
from-
are, well, they're all over. Well, the one in North Anson's over the Carabasset. The other two are over the Kennebec.
Yeah, it's Eugene Cole Bridge, and it's a bridge right next to Eugene Cole's Memorial Bridge.
Right.
So, and I can go from where to where? From Oakland?
Oakland all the way to Bingham.
Where does it start in Oakland?
So actually, the trail connects to it down there off of the Oakland Road. We have a meeting this week with the school district. We're trying to build a park and ride right down there off of Pleasant Street in Oakland. We don't have one at the moment, but that's in the works.
Okay.
So, and then it goes all the way up through. We're still having these fights with Jay Strickland and company up there in Bingham, but it basically goes all the way to Bingham. It's the trail, it extended the trail that used to run from Solon to Bingham, and we purchased all the
Okay.
way down to the active line in Oakland.
Right, because it used to only be from Solon to Bingham.
Right.
That was like off,
Yeah, so we bought it in 22. We closed late 22. We pulled all the rails and ties and started converting it, and we finished last year. The Norwalk trestle was the last one to get done. Actually, two there in Norwalk. There's a little one too. So we had it open last fall all the way up. It was open last winter all the way up through.
so when you say bikes, does that include e-bikes?
Yes, we don't
Okay.
exclude e-bikes. Some of the, just so you know, I've been told by landowners that many of them don't allow them. The big debate that's going on out there, there's different classifications of e-bikes and whether they want to allow some and not others, and whether some of them have to be registered or not. Because if they're not registered and they're a motor vehicle, then they may or may not be in some level of violation. But we allow
Okay.
dirt bikes, so I don't get hung up over the
Yeah,
e-bikes.
so the problem with that is like mine is pedal assist. So it doesn't even play into, it's a regular bike unless you push a button and pedal assist up a hill.
Right.
So it doesn't do a bit more damage than any
No, I mean,
motorbike that you
You've
have.
got
on
dirt
there.
bikes out there, right? So
Yeah,
you're not going to hurt
yeah.
it. I mean, the big fight over the bicycles is on bike trails that are through the woods, and then are they hurting or whatever. My personal opinion is none of these have enough power to really rip it
No.
up. They're just helping those of us whose legs are getting a little bit tired get over some of the spots that we might not so easily get over now. But
It's a hill. It's a damn hills. This e-bike changed everything for me. I will be out on it daily because now I have pedal assist up a hill.
right.
I mean, I went up Sugarloaf with my e-bike up the road to Sugarloaf, which is all uphill until you get to the bag. And,
Right.
and it was a piece of cake. It was like a piece of cake, but I'm not supposed to have my e-bike on the trail across the street because it's Indian land and they they consider e-bike a motorized vehicle.
Right, yeah, and that's what I'm saying, there's 3 different classifications of those e-bikes, and some people allow them all, some don't want to allow some, and that whole discussion is ongoing, unfortunately, but in our case, our multi-use trails are open to motorized as well, so we don't care.
Yeah, okay, I'm going on that trail. I don't know when, but we we visited my grandmother's grave in Madison yesterday, and we saw that, and it's like perfect. We're heading up there sooner than later. So okay, what's that? Yeah, that'll be fun, Brian. Thanks.
You're welcome. Yeah, they're having a ribbon cutting ceremony at the south end of the trestle in Norwich Walk on June 8th.
Okay.
So it's been open since last fall, but they want to have, something official there. So that's what we're doing. I don't know yet who all's coming. Supposedly maybe the governor, some of the senators, representatives. I don't know.
Yeah, so Brad will be there. Brad Fan
Yeah.
will be there. That's
Yeah.
his territory.
Brad's intending to be there. He's the one that actually picked the date and time. June 8th at noon is when it is. So
Yeah, yeah. No, that's historic. That's historic land. So that'll be fun biking it. That'll be amazing biking it. So that'll be good.
cool.
Cool. That's what I say.
All right, so we're having AI notes taken today. That'll be an interesting process. Thank you. I don't know if we should be worried, but there we go.
Can we get to review them before they go public?
Rebecca asked for it, and I was like, "That's fine." So, YouTube does the same thing too. So,
I actually didn't. I mean, it's just part of my, I guess, my login that it comes on automatically. I don't know. It's a new feature.
Cool.
Well, we're pretty close to I think we've got a quorum. Heather, do you want to call the roll? I know it's only 1:02, but let's get going.
sure. Karla,
I'm here and I apologize. I'm not on camera. I had a little accident over the weekend, so I'm not looking very pretty today. So
Oh,
Hope you're better soon.
thank you very much.
Ryan,
Here.
Peter,
Here.
Rebecca,
Here.
Jim,
Here?
Kris, John,
damage.
Catherine is here.
I'm here.
Roberta Manter,
Here. There'll be another time.
Ryan,
Here.
Steve, and Vivian is absent.
Yeah, these days. my name-
All right. Well, we have an agenda that Heather put together, and we've done the roll call, and let's go with the adoption of the January 3, 2024 meeting minutes. We'll all look back in our time machines and try to remember what happened on January 3, and if these minutes are accurate or any changes need to be made. Comments? If not, is there a motion to adopt?
Moved.
Okay, second? I'll second the motion to adopt the minutes of January 3, 2024. Any discussion? Corrections? Okay. All in favor? Yeah, we got to do a roll call vote. I'm sorry, we're online. Go ahead, Heather.
Karla,
Yes.
Ryan,
Yes.
Peter,
Yes.
Rebecca.
Yes.
Jim,
Yes.
Kris, I think he's absent today. John Monk, absent. Catherine,
Yes.
Roberta,
Yes.
Ryan,
Yes.
and Steve, I think he's absent. And I know Vivian's absent. Okay.
All right, so the first substantive item on our agenda is discussion on the Commission's progress. Well, it hasn't been quite 2 years. The legislature started this 2 years ago with legislation. We began meeting in October of 2022, and we put together 2 reports to the legislature. One in early 2023, one early this year. The first one gave some general ideas as to where we thought we might be able to help reduce confusion and address some of the contention over issues involving abandoned and discontinued roads. The second report had some draft legislation. We had a bunch of ideas on the table, but in the end could find support only for amending the private road, private way statute. And so we made that proposal, and the State and Local Government Committee and its members basically sponsored that legislation and got it out on the floor. And it was at that point that several of the members, of course, reserved the right to oppose it, and we had comments come in at the last minute, so that we wound up with just amending one section, Section 3105A of Title 23, dealing with the ability of municipalities to annually, or through the legislative body, determine whether to spend money on what still is called a private way instead of a public easement. So we only got half a loaf on one section out of all of that work. So the legislature has, that's the Commission's progress from my perspective. LD 2264 was the vehicle for those changes. It was enacted as Public Law Chapter 642. And in 642, part of it was dealing with that private way, municipal money on a private way. But part of it sets our tone for what we're supposed to do this year. And so when we're talking about the Commission's goals for the year, there are several things that, 4 items in particular that the legislature has told us they want us to consider. Not only what we're doing, but also in addition to the things that we were supposed to be doing, like simplifying the terms and eliminating confusion on those terms, we are required to talk about the scope of public use allowed on a public easement over an abandoned or discontinued road, the need or justification for each type of use, the impact of the public use on abutting property owners, and ways to reduce the negative impacts on abutting property owners. We're also supposed to address and make recommendations on property owner liability, including personal injury, property damage, and environmental damage liability resulting from public use of an abandoned or discontinued road. 3, options to create a road inventory of abandoned and discontinued roads in the state, and 4, options to create a right-of-way template for property owners to use when a local unit of government considers discontinuing the road abutting a property owner's property. So we have to address those 4 items. We still have the ability, the authority to continue to do what we'd started doing, which was trying to eliminate confusion in the use of several terms like public way, private way, public easement, and this was something that was given to us last session, and we didn't get through that. I guess my concern is, this is a group, it's a stakeholder group. We are representatives, many of us, of particular interests, and can't act alone on behalf of those interests, whether it's state agencies, state recreational agencies, whether it's woodlot owners, whether it's private road butters, whether it's municipalities, whether it's counties. We're here as representatives of those groups, but we do not have authority to bind to those organizations to agree to anything. So we have several meetings. We have until February 1st to come up with answers to those questions. Can we agree that we will try to address those answers in a way that we can deliver our organizations? the last thing that this committee wants is to have delegated these issues to a group that it thinks has the horsepower and the knowledge and the background to resolve the issues, then have everybody come in and see and show that there's no resolution. So are we on board with making this work and coming out with recommendations that we truly can endorse? The legislature does not have the time to go into the weeds on these issues when a bill comes up in front of them. That's why they have kicked this to us. We, for better or worse, they think we know this well enough that we can resolve these things that the legislature has been dealing with for decades. And they're trusting us to come up with a resolution that we can bring back to them and that it can fly and not be shot down at public hearing by everybody who walks in. So are we willing to put the work in, and can we deliver our organizations to come up with a consensus that will actually be approved by state and local government and by the legislature?
I think Roberta and Brian both have their hands raised. They want to make a statement.
Please go first. Go ahead.
Okay. First of all, I think we did accomplish something significant in getting that little piece through. That, in a way, is a step towards what we've suggested with minimum maintenance roads, because it makes it clear that a town can spend a little bit of money to help somebody out without obligating them to bring every road up to full town road standard. One of the things that we've advocated for from the beginning, when they were first talking about forming this commission, was that we felt that all these different interests should be included, because if we come up with a solution that works for us and doesn't consider anybody else, it's going to get shot down. So you can blame me if you want for having dissenting factions here, because I was the one who said we need to include all kinds of interests that will be involved in this so that they can all have their say in it. The challenge now is to try to find something that we can all agree on. But I do think that little piece that we got through will be a help, because in the past, for example, in the town of Fayette, they've said that 3105A only authorized them to use town equipment when your house was actually on fire, which is pretty useless, because if they bring the plow truck in front of the first fire truck, how's the plow truck going to get back out to make another pass so the next fire truck can come in and make it wide enough so they don't get stuck? In order to plow that road wide enough to get fire trucks in and out and volunteers past each other, etc., by the time they finish plowing the road wide enough, the house is going to be completely gone. So this makes it clear that they can do what maintenance is necessary in case there's a fire, to keep a fire lane open. And that, I think, is significant. That's, as I said, that's very similar to what we've advocated with minimum maintenance roads. We don't think every road needs to be brought up to town road standard. If they can just be improved a little bit at a time, that would be a good thing. So that's a step in the right direction. Another thing that I wanted to mention is that in the charge that the legislature gave us, if I can find where I filed it here, it says, in addition to matters it's required to consider by statute. In other words, we're still supposed to look at the things that we were given to do initially, and these things are added onto that. But that doesn't mean that we can't look into the things that we were originally supposed to be doing. I do think that their number 4 is a fairly easy one to attack. I think we can come up with a template that works. It would have to have some flexibility in it, because not every situation is the same. But if we had a base format that people could start with, I think that would make it easier, and that would be a step in the right direction. So those are my initial thoughts.
Thank you. And you know, we still have last year's homework. That's right. Mm-hmm. So, Brian.
So one of the things that we struggled with, Kris isn't here, but I mean, we talked, our departments talked. There seems to be some discrepancy or difference in opinion. I know when talking to Rebecca there last year and Jim about this, what is these roads? Are they, like at one point, I think Rebecca said that the roads are really all public easements. And one of our struggles is a lot of the laws, and talking to like Steve Landry at MDOT, the whole access route issue for both snowmobile and ATV assumes that we're talking about, town or state maintained roads that can be access routes, and ones that aren't maintained for, regular motor vehicle use are not access routes. In this whole discussion about what really is the status of these roads legally, kind of is what raised a lot of concerns about what can we agree to and not agree to in the whole landowner liability issue as well. So I'm wondering if it doesn't make sense to go back to what we talked about, a few months ago, about trying to get some official legal response from the courts on the status of some of these that might make it easier moving forward to actually find resolve that works. Because I think the unknown about the status and how that impacts existing laws and what we do and don't do and can and can't do, I think makes it hard for people to support stuff that maybe otherwise they could.
Okay. Other thoughts?
Well, I'll just jump in, I guess, and say that, I watched the online public hearing and the work session, and, Jim, your comment at the beginning about getting into the weeds, to me, from what I saw, was exactly what the state and local government committee did at those hearings. They went into the weeds, and they got caught in the weeds, and they couldn't get out of the weeds. And yeah, I guess, Roberta, you're right that we got something, so that's good. But I think we lost a lot too. And I don't know if there's any way possible to get something in front of the state and local government committee where they don't go into the weeds. I look at this session's coming, is now ended, a new election, new members of a committee. How many of them are still going to be there? Are we back to square one? And we'll be back to square one again and again and again. I don't know. That's just for watching it and hearing comments. They didn't understand what we were trying to convey. You used the term private way a couple times, and you had a member of the committee who lives on a road, it sounds like, that has one of those little green things at the end of her road that's basically listed as a way, and it's her driveway. We weren't attacking people's driveways, right? But that's how it was perceived, because again, we get right into the weeds on some of this stuff, and I don't know, I don't want to be Debbie Downer, but it sure didn't feel good at the end of all of that, seeing very little getting accomplished from what I thought we had put forward was pretty good. But that's my 2 cents.
Others?
Jimmy, let me ask that after Ryan's comments there. I mean, this is the first time most of us has been involved with a commission, but I've always wondered, with all the weed diving that we've done, in a typical commission, like Catherine or Rebecca, you may know how this works, but in a typical commission that comes forward with the results of all their work, is that usually taken with lots of credibility and, recognizing that these people have done a lot of hard work, and probably far more than what the folks sitting on the committee know now, because they never got into the weeds? Or is a commission just, yeah, it's a commission, okay, they come up with some stuff and they don't have to believe anything? Just what's the whole level of credibility on a commission?
Catherine?
Catherine, you muted.
I mean,
Catherine, you muted.
I guess I could weigh in, Peter, and just say that generally it helps when we don't have members going up and opposing what it was that we presented as a group. I think that adds to credibility and cycles back around to, you know, kind of a lack of understanding. For instance, what we got enacted, it was already practice, but it provided some sort of clarity that made people feel comfortable, but it already existed. I don't think we did a really good job conveying that this time around, that everything that we were trying to change already existed, is already interpreted in that way. And there were last minute concerns, I think, that kind of derailed that.
Karla?
Well, I just wanted to say that, you know, as someone that opposed a lot of the proposals that we had last session, I just wanted to say I am committed to this process. I would like to see us succeed. It's never fun going in front of a committee and having the committee wonder what the, you know, what we've been doing for work and whether we'll get to some solutions or not. So, you know, I just wanted to say that I am committed to the work, and I will, you know, do what it takes to hope that we can reach some resolution. I was heartened by that the committee put forward from some of the suggestions for our work going forward, 2 proposals that we already had on our list, I think. The scope of public access and the liability. I think last fall when we were meeting, I think we got close on the liability issue. So I see potential there that may be an issue where we can reach some consensus.
Roberta?
Yeah, a few comments. I've been trying to kind of take notes here so I don't forget. First thing is to put this in perspective. I wasn't expecting this to solve the problems overnight, because I've been involved in 3 different study groups before, and none of them has succeeded in making much progress, because it is such a huge problem with so many different rabbit trails going off from it. We've been working on this, my husband and I, for 40 years. So we should expect it to take a little while to find solutions. I think getting the court to weigh in on it is an excellent idea. That's something we've been asking for a long time. If we could get the facts presented to the court and have them give us some clarity on it, because we certainly don't have clarity now, particularly on the constitutional issues. And if we have time, I'd like to get into that later. Rebecca, as far as you saying that Section 3105A already existed, yes, it did, but I disagree with you as to whether it was applied with an even hand, because in our town, it certainly wasn't. We were told that they could only bring a fire truck in if your house was actually on fire. And it would have been nice if MMA had stepped in and said, no, you're misinterpreting that. That should mean that you can go in and do other maintenance when necessary. And that wasn't the case. If towns generally knew that they could do a little bit of maintenance on these roads, I think that would be a big help.
I'm going to take Rebecca off the hook here before we go back to Kathy and just say, Roberta, respectfully, I worked at MMA for 8 years on legal staff and helped write the roads manual, as you know. Municipalities have been advised that they have the right but not the obligation to maintain public easements, and they can do that by vote of town meeting or by vote of town council. I don't know what happened in Fayette. I can tell you that our advice, my advice when I was there, and continues to be while I'm standing right here, is that a municipality has the right through its legislative body to instruct the town to decide that the town will take care of certain public easements. May decide not to take care of all of it, may decide to take only a portion of it, but it has the right to do that. It isn't just for emergencies, it's on a regular basis. So that's always been the advice, as far as I'm aware. So, Kathy?
Yes. So the original question was, do they take commissions seriously? And we take commissions very seriously when I was down there. I was there for 8 years. We look at what they've come up with, and it is taken the way that it's presented. We got a victory. Granted, it's not the greatest victory. We didn't get everything we want, but that's never going to happen. You get small victories along the way. And it has been, I was there 8 years. In 8 years, I brought the roads bill in front of the legislature, in front of state and local. Until this commission was formed, it never happened. It didn't happen because the understanding wasn't there. The commission does give a lot of validity to what we're doing. And I would suggest that everyone has a big part. It doesn't matter if you agree or disagree. That doesn't matter. What matters is that you listen to both sides. Karla's in a place where she had concerns. Her unit had concerns. We need to take that seriously. You're not gonna win if you don't look at both sides of a story. That's how I believe that this is approached, and that's why this commission is working. It is working.
So, Catherine, what's the value of a 10-0 recommendation versus 8-2?
It's like trying to win a race. You may not do it the first time, but they're aware of where you're coming from and what you're presenting, and they will take it seriously another time. Yes, there are new people coming in, but I find that the new people coming in aren't like the old people going out. I mean, I got set in a way my first 2 years there, and that's the only way I thought for a while. And it's like, these people are not coming in like that. They're coming in with a lot more knowledge. And because of this commission, they are coming in with knowledge. And if you have anything in your town that has this abandoned road, discontinued road, private way, public way, it has just gotten a little clearer. I think it's baby steps. It's always going to be baby steps with anything you want to do. I think it's moving forward. We just need to move forward.
Fair enough. Okay. Anyone else want to talk about this piece before we actually start talking about how we're going to approach the work plan for the year? Roberta?
Yeah, I did want to say that I am also extremely committed to this process. And there were things that I voted against and, went against the rest of the commission. And it didn't feel good to do that, but it was something that I felt I had to do to represent the people that I'm called here to represent. And I certainly don't hold it against Karla that she did the same thing. That's what each of us is here for, is to represent the group that we were named to represent here. And all those issues need to be heard. They need to be considered. And it's going to take a while to work things out, but that's part of the process. And I don't think we should put ourselves down as a commission just because we haven't solved everything already.
Fair enough. As chair, I guess what's difficult, and I understand, I respect everyone's opinion here. And I respect everyone's right to disagree with this. And I also respect the fact that we're not all going to agree on everything. But when you're presenting a report of a commission and proposed legislation, and then members start talking about the finer points and disagreeing with that legislation, it invites the committee that's delegated everything to us to resolve it to also join us getting into the finer points. And that's how we all wind up in the weeds. Maybe what we need to do is think about if we're going to propose something as a commission, then maybe we ought to act by unanimous consensus. And if we don't all agree, then it doesn't go forward, because otherwise the cracks will show in front of the legislature, and we'll wind up talking about things that they delegated to us to try to resolve. And then they'll have it back in their plate again, and they, again, will not be entirely pleased with the commission's work. Do we want to say that if we're going to recommend anything, then it's going to have to be by unanimous vote, or otherwise we're not going to make a recommendation?
I could support that.
In other words, Jim, you'd be our spokesperson.
Well, whoever is the spokesperson, I'm not trying to take over anything here, but just the commission would say, we unanimously decided this. And that way we don't have our members coming in, members of this commission, with a dissent that then invites everybody to start going into the rabbit holes of all the issues that they delegated to us to try to resolve. Other people may bring up issues. We can't help that. But if we're not unanimous, then let's not bring forward the recommendation. Does that sound like a reasonable way to move? Okay.
Yes.
I would just say I agree with that. I think that is what we should do, but I think you all need to be aware. I think we're all maybe all in the same boat anyway, but like I know those of us who stay employees, which I won't be much longer, so maybe it won't matter to me, but we can't officially say just because we've been in the process and agree with it and said this is the right thing to do. Technically, for it to go to the legislature, it's got to go through that whole process. Like with me, you know, I took it back to my department and Kris took it back to his, and our commissioners got together. And then they hauled us into a meeting and what's this really going to do? And what's this going to do? And then we talked through all that and had them in agreement, but that takes a little while. So if we're trying to have a vote, you know, and then 2 days later, we're going to send this report to the legislature, it's not possible. I'm sure Karla ran into something similar because their you know, committee is going to vote on it on their end. So we got to give ourselves enough time to make sure that everybody really is unanimous, and that we're not going to get somebody show up afterwards and say, hey, we've reevaluated this and our department or whomever is opposed. Because I think some of that may have been a problem as well as we got tight down to the wire.
Okay, and so that makes it important to figure out what the due date is, what we're trying to accomplish by when, and then back it out so that we have enough time that right. Everybody can go back. So February 1 is when our report's due. Basically, we have January to write the report, but we need to have adopted our positions by December in order to start writing that report and to draft legislation. So if we need to take positions in December, then when do we need to have something for our organizations to look at and respond to? By November 1st? Can't hear you, Brian. Sorry, you're muted.
I would say that's a good target, just to give everybody a chance.
Okay, so we need proposals and draft legislative language by the beginning of November. We'll say November 1st. Okay, so that gives us it's mid-May. Realistically, we can start plugging away on this June 1st. We'll have 5 months to address all these issues and have draft legislation together that we can adopt by November 1 and give to our members to respond to. It's a lot of work. But that's why you signed up for this, right?
Yeah.
I just wanted the rest of you to have as much misery as I've had. No, one difficulty that I have is that I expect I'll be working for Maine robotics camps again through the month of July. And I can take a day off someplace in the month, but I would really rather not have to do that more than once. We could meet after 4 o'clock. That works any day. We could meet on a Saturday, but as I said, I'd rather not have 2 meetings in July and have to either miss one of them or miss another day of work.
Well, this is
Keep in
Maine.
mind,
Summer
there's
is,
all of us are in that boat though. So, I mean, there's people that aren't here today because they've got other conflicts. I have to leave early. I think we just schedule them and, if you can't make a day, then you can't make a day. Follow up with the minutes because I don't think we can ever set a schedule. If we're going to meet 10, 12 times a year, we're just going to have to pick dates and go with it and hope it works.
Well, the difficulty for me that makes it a little bit different than it is for you is that this is the one good paying job that I have during the year. The rest of the year we're living on Social Security. So having those 4 or 5 weeks really makes a difference to us.
well, it's also summer in Maine, which is brief and appreciated, but it's also vacation time, so it's going to be tough to pull many of us together, and many of us have summer gigs as well, so we understand. It's we'll try to make the best of it. What do we want to try? I mean, we have to address the issues that the legislature set out for us to do with these 4 particular issues. So that's a must. And we still have last year's homework with regard to addressing those terms. That's probably enough to keep us busy and out of mischief for the next 5 months, 5.5 months. That seem fair?
Mm-hmm.
Jim, let me ask this again, because some of us have not followed this month to month to month. So out of what we proposed versus what ended up as the passage, and talking about baby steps, did we just scratch and get 10% of what we were suggesting? So we've still got 90% that we need to push forward, plus these 4 new things?
We proposed a baby step, and that baby step was trying to clarify what's in state law right now with regard to road associations, and then within it, the ability of municipalities to do work on public easements. That was just a beachhead, trying to get rid of this term private way and insert instead public easements. That was kicked out of the bill. That was in the bill that we proposed, that was initially proposed, and that was taken out. So we proposed a beachhead, and we wound up with maybe a wading pool. And so, we didn't really get very far down the road, so to speak, to clarifying issues with regard to private way, public way, public easements, all those that they gave us last session. So I think we can pick that up again and try to clarify some of that. Maybe try to do a better job of explaining what's in the law now and why this isn't such a big deal, some of the changes we're proposing. But then we have the 4 issues that were set before us by the legislature this year. Some of those issues bring up things that we had raised as issues, as priorities: landowner liability, responsibility for private for public easements, and so it isn't a big stretch to work on those again, to get back into those. The template, yeah, that probably is pretty easy once we get through all the other discussions. We might be able to write that one off pretty easily. Do we want to, so really we're talking about 2 priorities, big picture. One is old homework on terms, right?
Yep.
That we were given last year, and try to clarify the confusion and the use of terms, modernize things. So terms, and then the new homework, the 4 issues.
I'm just wondering, if you look at the old and how many meetings and how much discussion we had to get to that point, and then you look at these 4 new ones, are we going to discuss these 4 new ones for the next 5 meetings and not do anything on the old stuff? Or is this going to go rather smoothly? Or I'm just wondering how much is going to take more time. Because that's going to help answer, what are we going to continue to do? Work on the old stuff or concentrate on the new stuff?
Don't you think 2 and 3 are really the old anyway?
I think 3, though, talks about abandoned and discontinued road inventory. We haven't really, I don't know if anybody could do that.
I mean, what you have done doesn't accomplish any of that.
The road inventory stuff is just for what towns maintain. Who knows where the abandoned and discontinued roads are? That I don't know how we would start that.
Well, someone would have to go take a look in the registry of deeds to see what road discontinuances have been recorded. That's not going to catch them all. But then you'd have to look through municipal records for all those that have been discontinued, because not all of them got recorded. You have to look through county records to see what's been discontinued. And as for abandoned, well, that just happens by operation of law. That isn't written down anywhere. Towns may have an internal list of the ones they consider to be abandoned. Roberta?
Yeah, I've had a lot of time to think about this one. One of the suggestions I've made before is start with the easy ones. If we know what we do have, if we know what the towns still are maintaining, which for the most part, the DOT or the E911, between the two of them have most of that information. Or whether it's privately maintained, if it's maintained by somebody, if we can start with those, then we can add to it little bits at a time as we can. And a couple of thoughts that I have on that. One is to do a crowdsourcing kind of a thing where we try to get volunteers from as many towns as possible to start on doing an inventory. And I think the way to do that without having, dabbling in having citizens who don't have any knowledge of the law trying to interpret things, don't have them interpret it, just have them find the records. Similar to what the DOT did with county records years ago, where they just went through and they recorded every time there was something discussed by the county having to do with a layout, alteration, or discontinuation of a road, they noted down the book and page number. If we had that to start with, then when something comes up, when there's a dispute, then you can go to that record and say, okay, here's the record. Now we can have the attorneys look at and figure out what it means. And I think there should be a fairly simple format for doing that. I've gone through, I don't know, probably at least a dozen towns or more already. And I know of probably another half a dozen towns that have done inventories independently. Another good source is comprehensive plans. Some towns, when they did their comprehensive plan, they went through and did an inventory. So if we can start by pulling those together and just have a standard format, similar to what the county has on these, or what the DOT has on these county records. It would list the volume, the page, the date, and just, a letter to indicate whether it's a layout, a discontinuance, a closing, winter closing, whatever. If we start with that, then we've got a place to look for the information when we need it.
Who's going to have responsibility to house and maintain this road inventory? What's the use of it going to be?
Ideally, I think it would be good if the DOT could find a place to do it. They've already got the records for the counties. So if they could also take in the records that were compiled for the towns, if there's a place where they could store that, that would make one central location where you could go for the records of either a county way or a town way.
Pete, you got something like that in your budget?
Zero. And my initial impression would be that is a very low focus of this department, and that's probably not going to happen. Maybe I'm wrong, but I've also been here for 47 years, and I kind of know that's not focus at all.
Pete, how much of your time is taken up with questions about abandoned and discontinued roads, public easements, who's responsible, and how do I get it plowed?
I get calls every week, but more importantly, I go out and do road inventories with every town. I did 4 in the last week, and I'm with the road guys or the town manager or the addressing officer people that know what they're maintaining exactly. And I come back with lots of changes every time. And another thing, Roberta, what you're saying is good, but I just wonder, as a municipal official myself in 7 different towns, I don't know who's going to do this work, because another thing that I've been asking a lot, when we've been doing training a ton in the last couple months on the road, 50 people in a class, many times, hundreds of people. And one question I commonly ask is, how many towns here have a list A to Z of all your local roads and what their legal right-of-way widths are? They may have their lengths and their names, but out of 50 people, routinely, you'd have 2 out of 50 raise the hand that had such a list. And that is most important, because if you have people complaining about trees or rock walls or ditches or something, the key is, where is your right-of-way line? Is that private property? Is that your business or not? And some of these towns have hired, what is it, the Muskie, Rebecca, what is it, the Margaret Chase Smith Center or the Muskie Center, the one that provides interns during the summer?
Yeah, both of them do, and they have targeted policy. So the Muskie School of Public Policy has done some in the past, and the Collins Center
Yeah,
has been focusing on roads a little bit.
They will hire some of these kids for the summer to come up with those lists, because that in itself, as important as it is, most towns don't have that and know they need to have it. And to me, that would have much more precedent for someone to take their time to spend on than coming up with the old discontinued and abandoned road list.
Brian?
Yeah, I was just going to ask Roberta or anybody else here, if there's a town they can think of that has the gold standard for what it is we're talking about. Is there a town that has a comprehensive list of their abandoned and discontinued roads, up to date, that I can call and say, I'd like to see that?
I can't guarantee if it's up to date, but I know that there are half a dozen towns that at least have made a stab at that process. Fayette being one of them. I was on the committee. Let's see, I think Searsport, there was a volunteer in Bodenham that did a real thorough search, found all the records on them. There's another town, I can't think of it off the top of my head, but I've got the file from that town. So I know some of them have done it.
Good. I mean, I have access to the main town city county management listserv. I'm just going to ask the question on there, because I want to see what that looks like. You know, I want to see what exactly we would be signing somebody up to do if we were going to propose something, because a lot of the conversation at the public hearing and the work session revolved around trying to put something forward that wouldn't come across as an unfunded mandate. And they spent an awful lot of time talking about verbiage so that it wouldn't be considered an unfunded mandate. And they convinced themselves that they could do that. But I can tell you, sitting there with my experience as a local and now county official, everything that came out of their mouths in regards to that would have been looked at by a town official and by MMA and by every other constituency that is involved in that as an unfunded mandate, period. I mean, there's just no, I'm not sugarcoating it. It's just the way it is. You tell somebody to do something and it's going to cost them something, that's an unfunded mandate. So they better have a purse that goes with it to pay for it. That's all.
Let's take a step back. We're not going to solve this issue this afternoon, but what we're trying to do is come up with some guidelines as to what we're going to do for a work plan for the year. But just think about this for a minute. What's the purpose of this? A lot of municipalities have a list of roads they maintain, and Pete has that information. The MDOT has that information. It doesn't necessarily address all of the roads that they don't maintain that might have been abandoned and discontinued. And so what's the purpose of the abandoned and discontinued list? Is it so that if Jim is looking to buy a house, my realtor can go do a search, or I can do a search as to whether or not there's a road to get there, or whether it's on an abandoned or discontinued road, and then I can ask Pete, gee, is the town maintain that? That still doesn't tell me if it's a public easement or if it's a town way. What is it we're trying to do here? And once you know what it is we're trying to do and who is going to be looking at this database, then you might have a better idea of whether this is something that should be a statewide database. Not trying to throw it at Pete, but just, should it be a statewide database? Is it countywide, like the Registry of Deeds, because it's going to be used by people who are buying and selling property? Or is it going to be town by town? So we, where should, if there's going to be this, what are the options to create a road inventory? Who's going to be looking at it? What's the purpose of it? Where should it be located based on who's going to be using it? And then
all they asked us to do is give them options, right? I mean, your question's really to them. What do you want it for? So we should just give them options and say, what do you want it for? We shouldn't even get into the weeds of it. Just give them, it has to be done this way, or this way, in which way is best for what you actually want for the use. I wouldn't even try to put it together. It's not asking us to. It's asking us to tell them what options there are.
So I don't know if it's helpful or not, but MMA has already provided guidance to towns on how to produce an inventory. And one thing that's really clear about that process too is that it's just a list that can be amended and changed, and it is not the legal status. The legal status of a road can only be determined by the court, and a town can't determine that. Like that, so it's never the final list, and it's just a place to start that is helpful. But it is a laborious thing, and I don't know how many towns have done it, but there's comprehensive guidance that already exists on how to conduct that, but also what it is and what it is not.
Right.
And like everything that Pete already has is exactly the maintenance piece, like whether or not the town maintains it.
And
That-
Jim, I think it was you or Joe that wrote that section in the roads manual.
Joe wrote that initially, and then I updated it, and others have since then too. And it's really handy for municipalities to know. And I think you don't need to go to court to find out whether a road has been formally discontinued. If there's an order of discontinuance that's in the town report, if it's recorded in the Registry of Deeds, it's an order of discontinuance. If it's in the county commissioner's books, that's it. That is the law. The real issue is with regard to abandonment, because if it's common law abandonment, yeah, that's something that you challenge case by case. It's factually oriented, and that's it. If it's statutory abandonment, it's a presumption of abandonment that can always be challenged in court. That's where the problems really lie. But okay, so we can give the options, Brian. The problem is trying to figure out, what's your purpose, and that may dictate where this rests. And if you're going to tell municipalities each town is going to be responsible to put together a list of abandoned and discontinued roads, it's a little bit different than what they've been doing. Talking about what they're responsible for and to what extent. So it's a little bit different. If you're going to tell DOT, that's fine, but it's going to cost money to prepare that list and to maintain it, especially if people are going to be relying upon it for legal matters, buying and selling property.
Well, I don't disagree. My question, we're trying to right now to answer this. We didn't ask the question. Shouldn't we be asking the people who asked the question? They put it in this bill. Do we know why they put that the way they did?
I think anyone here has as much knowledge as I would of that, which is not much at all. But go ahead, Roberta.
Yeah, a couple of thoughts I have on that. First of all, I agree with you that when you've got the record of the discontinuance, you know what the record is. At least that's a starting point. And if you know if it was discontinued before or after 1965 and what the wording was in the discontinuance order, that pretty well nails it down. The abandonment is the real fuzzy piece of it. But if we could just get those records of the discontinuance in one place, then even if there is a question, at least you know what the record is. That's the big problem that most people run into that come to me, is they don't know where the records are, and the town can't give them to them because the town doesn't know where the records are. But if we could just get those records compiled in one place, it would make it so much easier. The other thing is, you're asking who it is that wants that information. Probably about a dozen years ago or so, I was asked to give a talk to the Association of Registries of Deeds. And I took my printout that I had from the DOT of all the county discontinued roads with me. And they looked at that and they said, "Where did you get that? Where can we get a copy of that?" And I went back to the DOT and I said, "Can we get printouts of this for all the registries of deeds?" And they said, "Well, no, because the computer program that pulled out the discontinuances from the records is extinct. We don't have that program anymore." And I said, "Well, can I copy the printout that I have and get it to them?" And they said, "Sure." So now each of the registries of deeds has that printout for county discontinued roads. All it is it's an index that tells you the book and page number on which each of those discontinuances occurs. And then you can go to the book and page number and look it up. But if we had a similar thing for towns, I think the registries of deeds would be elated to have that. So maybe they're the place to store it. And it could be just in a book like the county records.
Here's where the rubber meets the road, so to speak, Brian. Let's say that we were to say toss out several options. Say one option is for municipalities to create and maintain a road inventory of all the abandoned and discontinued roads within their boundaries. I think that MMA would probably object to that because it'd be a fiscal note, would be requiring municipalities to be doing so. I'm not picking on MMA. I'm saying that would be an objection. There'd be a fiscal note because it'd be required to do something they aren't required to do now. And it's going to take resources that could otherwise go to other municipal needs. So there would be an objection there. If we were to say to Ryan, to the counties, well, you know, your registries of deeds would like this information. They'd find it useful. Realtors could go there. They go to find deeds. They'd go take a look at road status. Ryan's group of county administrators might be concerned about the cost that this would pose in order to create and maintain a new database that they aren't doing now. If we were to say another option, a third option would be for MDOT to do this on a statewide uniform basis, Pete would go back and the commissioner of the Department of Transportation would probably say, "We don't have the money in this for the budget," or the legislature is going to have to come up and fund a position and software and all of this. So yeah, we can toss out three options and each one of them will have an objection from a member of this commission because it's new resources that'll be required. So I don't know where we are with that.
That's where I say crowdsourcing. Get volunteers to do it.
And then, there's a question of how well you can rely upon information that's crowdsourced.
It's a start.
Well, I hear you. Do you want to buy your house based upon crowdsourced information upon whether you have a legal road? I don't know. If that's the purpose for this.
My point is that the crowdsourcing part would not be the legal analysis of what that discontinuance order means. It would just be, here's where you can find the discontinuance order and you can take it to your attorney and get a legal opinion on it. But you can't do that if you don't have the page number where the record is.
So Jim, those options you just gave, didn't you answer number 3? We just did the work. We gave 3 options. Sure, some of them aren't viable, but hey, we gave the options. Check.
They are the 3 options, aren't they?
That's what I'm saying, guys. We don't have to have all the answers per se. We can give them the 3 options, tell them everyone's got a fiscal note. You can't do unfunded mandates. So if you want this to happen, pick an option and fund it. That's all we're required of. That's my outlook. I think if we overthink it, we're just going to lead back to them getting into the weeds and sending us back on something else again.
Okay. We can do that.
So Jim, should we I don't know if we want to do this today, but maybe at our next meeting, concentrate on these 4 things, new ones. And at least we get an idea. Is this something we can talk about for the next 30 minutes and resolve, check it off, go to the next one? Or are we going to beat on these things for the next 5 meetings?
Let's talk about the template one. I think we can sort of set aside because that should be easy once we get through the other issues. Okay. 1 and 2. The scope of public use allowed on a public easement. Justification for each type of use. Impact on abutting property owners, ways to reduce negative impacts. That one's probably going to create the biggest range of potential solutions and possibly the most disagreement. As far as property owner liability, I think we were pretty close, as Karla noted and others. We were pretty close on that one. That might not take too much more work.
I believe the hang up on the liability was that if the landowner is not the one who is responsible for the damage, who is responsible for repairing it? And whoever you say is responsible is going to object because they're going to have to pay. Right. But I think clearly it should not be the landowner. And again, maybe you can give the towns options so that it's not a mandate. You can say that if they allow the public to use one of these roads that's not maintained by the public and there is damage, they may be held liable for the damage. But you don't have to keep the public option to use it. You can let it go back to the landowners and then it's not your responsibility anymore. If you keep the public off of it, then the public isn't going to be damaging it. So
well,
maybe we can remove the options.
If you remove the public easement that allows the public access over it and there are no private easements, then no one will have a right to go down those roads. And then we'll have the issues that we started hearing about from Dayton and other places earlier in the year, where people are having their rights to use the road entirely cut off.
Well, that's where you need to have some mechanism for providing private access without having the public still have access.
I think it's worth exploring whether or not this is a significant issue because Maine has the strongest protections within this area of any state. And I'm not 100% certain that anyone's been individually held responsible for anything that has happened through someone else using these public easements. There are statutory provisions that require a municipality to be the person that fixes things, particularly when it goes into a great pond. They already exist in statute. So I'm not quite sure this is as big of an issue as we might think that it is. I'm not aware of any cases. Are you, Roberta?
Well, I was wondering, is it possible for me to share my screen and show you some examples of what happens? Can I do that?
Are you aware of someone being held responsible for damage they did not cause to a roadway?
Yes. I will have to say
by a court
because the person who needs that road for access ends up repairing the road.
Okay, but that's different than them being held liable for environmental damage, which I think is what the liability issue is about.
No, the liability issue is also about a third party. If I go down Roberta's road, is it John Young Road?
Young Road. Young
Road, okay. If I go down Young Road and Roberta has been out there grading it, and Roberta didn't do a great job on the grading, and I wound up going into a ditch, then property damage and personal injury, I can bring actions against her for negligent maintenance of that road. Because as a public easement, the public has a right of passage, I can drive over it. And anybody who maintains it, if the town doesn't maintain it, I can bring an action against. And that's where I think a lot of environmental liability is part of it, but it's also that personal injury, property damage piece that's a problem.
Well, I think you can bring an action for anything, but prevailing is quite another matter. And I don't think that there's been any prevalence on someone that's doing, not negligent, but, they're doing their due diligence to the extent that they can, and they haven't, dug a huge hole across it intentionally to keep people from traveling down that. I think that's an intentional act versus something that, you've traveled upon because it's, not a publicly maintained road and went off. I think when I read through the case stats, it seemed pretty consistent that someone maintaining a road that wasn't publicly maintained was not held liable on those issues because of the strength of Maine's law.
Well, I don't think that there's anything that protects a person in that instance. It's going to be a negligence action, and someone's going to have to bear the responsibility to at least defend the case. They might.
I think a couple of cases even they got.
I'm not aware of any negligence actions that have been filed. That would be at the Superior Court level, and I've not seen any that have gone to the law court. But it is a risk. It is a risk that someone in Roberta's position is subject to if the town doesn't maintain a public easement, and someone has to in order for her to get to her house.
Mhm. Yep.
So that's why we were talking about the potentially creating some kind of protection from liability where the town doesn't maintain the way, the public easement, and the abutters have to. Then let's give some degree of protection to the private landowner, the abutter who maintains it in a responsible way.
I think that there's nothing wrong with doing that, that adding to that, but I do think it is worth, like, when we're triaging how much time we're going to spend on something, how big of an issue and concern that is, because generally we should be trying to focus as much as we can on the issues that we know are significant and we know are continuing. I mean, theoretically, yes, that this is a huge problem, but I think we get down into the weeds as we had the conversation around the ATV usage, then we spend a lot of time on something that might not have proportional value to the outcome of this commission. That would be my.
We've been told to address this issue, and it is something that we've looked at earlier and had come close to, and I think that the breaking point was the issue of whether for private road associations, where someone forms a road association because a municipality has decided not to maintain a public easement, should people be required to start road associations? And there was a question of constitutionality that Roberta raised, and that's when things, all due respect, that's when things really started going off the rails, because now we're starting to hear the legislature say that the courts have to be involved. The courts are not going to get involved to define things for us. The courts only get involved when the legislature declares there is a solemn occasion that requires them to get involved. They're not going to define for us the difference between a road that exists on the basis of a public easement of passage versus the statutory public easement. They're not going to go there, not unless there's an active case that requires them to go. So we need to try to pick our battles too and figure out where we spend our time. I agree. We used committees over the last year to try to resolve issues or focus issues and then bring them back to the larger group. That help?
I think it did.
Is it worth trying again?
I think it gives us more time to work on some of the thorny issues.
You talking, Jim, about the 4 new things?
Mm-hmm. Yes. Although I think three and 4 we can probably resolve pretty easily without having to do that. But 1 and 2, scope of public use allowed on a public easement over an abandoned and discontinued road, the need for each type of use. I think if we were to have 3 or 4 people on a committee to kick those over, and then the liability issue. And I think on liability, it'd be really important to have Karla and Roberta on that committee because you have concerns that I think need to be addressed.
I
So
agree.
I'm volunteering you.
Well, once again, I kind of want to be on all the committees.
Yeah, I know. That's the downside of it is wanting to be on all of them.
But if the both of you could be on the committee number for issue number 2 particularly, that would be, I think that would be helpful. I think there's a contribution you could make there.
Sure.
I'll be on that as well. Who else wants to join the party?
If I can be on both 1 and 2, I will.
Okay, who wants to be on 1? Brian, sorry to see you go, but thank you for joining in today. On 1, who wants to be on that? Defining the scope of public use. Yeah, okay. Okay, I'll be on that as well.
I'll join that as well.
Great, thank you. Okay, so Jim, Roberta, and Karla are on both committees, and who else would like to join on each of those parties for 1 and 2? Ryan, which one?
So sorry, I had to step out of my office for just a few minutes, so I missed the committees. So if you could just repeat those for me.
Oh, sure. We're looking at, on the 4 issues that were given us for homework for this year, 3 and 4 we think we can pretty much deal with. 1 and 2, 1 is the scope of public use, type of use, and 2 is liability. Who would like to serve on a committee to look at 1 and a committee to look at 2?
So liability, like landowner?
Yes.
And the scope of use is what, Jim?
This is the first one. It's the scope of public use allowed on a public easement, the type of each use, ways to reduce negative impacts on abutting landowners.
Yeah, I would be willing to serve on that one.
Okay.
I'd like to serve on that one.
We'd love to have you. So Roberta and Karla and I are on both committees. Ryan is on 1. Who else wants to join in the fun? Catherine, which, number 2? Okay.
Okay, so I don't understand the first one, the scope of use. But I would be willing to learn and maybe I can add something to it. And yes, I would do the need or justification too. So I'll be on both committees.
Okay.
Jim, I think it's important that we actually have state representation from the trail systems on that particular.
On 1, I think that's true. So Brian just went off the line, so we'll put him on the committee. Brian or John should be on. Someone who's worried about natural resource use of these public easements. And so we'll offline, I'll get in touch. So this is something where we don't have to set up our committee meetings today. We can work through Heather and do a doodle poll, figure out what works. But that way we can maybe have a committee meeting before the commission gets back together, and we might be able to refine things a little bit to make our commission time, which is a little more difficult and valuable, more efficient. All right. So we've established we'll be working by unanimous consensus on items that we recommend to the legislature. We have 2 committees to look at issues 1 and 2. We've come up with a way to address issue 3, and issue 4 we think we can take care of on its own as we move along. We do have all of the homework subjects from last year that we have to deal with. I'll refresh my recollection. We'll go back over that at our next commission meeting and see how we want to address those things. But ultimately, whatever we've got together, we have to get everything in order so that by November 1st, we know what we're going to be recommending so that everybody can take it back to their organizations so that in December, we can say these are the things we're doing and we're putting in our report. And we can write that report in January without making everybody jump at the last minute to go back to organizations and department heads and commissioners.
I've had some ideas on the definitions piece. One of my ideas is that we really need to go back and find out how we ended up with the terminology we've got. And in doing some research online, I ran across an excellent paper that was written for surveyors in Massachusetts, which really gets to the heart of where we ended up with private ways. And if I could send some excerpts from that out to the commission, would that be okay to do? So kind of as a reading assignment for everyone?
Absolutely, and if that is a resource that's available online, if you could give us a link to it, that would be very helpful.
I can do that, but I think it's something like 60 pages long, and there are maybe a dozen pages that are really pertinent. So
I can't think of anything better for weekend reading.
I had some ideas about how maybe we could write definitions that don't mess with what we've already got, because as somebody on the committee, on the state and local government committee, was saying, what does it mean when it says private way on the sign at the end of your road? Instead of trying to give a new definition for any of these things, how about having a dictionary style definition where it has private way means one of the following: number one, that sign at the end of your road; number two, a public easement; number three, a private road that's privately owned and maintained. So have different definitions that will clarify what that term might mean, and then depending on the context or when it was applied, you have to figure out which of those definitions applies. But that way you're not trying to give a new term to it and further confuse things, or take an old term and make it mean something that it didn't mean originally.
For today, I really don't know that there was much else we could do except go through, what had happened with the legislature, what happened with the proposals that we had, and try to figure out a rough work plan for the year. It didn't make sense to try to get deeply into any particulars today. Does that make sense?
Yes.
Okay. Any additional thoughts about where we're heading for the year, things that we need to be thinking of, how we're going to get there?
Well, I still would like to get people to look at the constitutional issue. And I came up with some questions that, if those questions could be answered, it might give us a better idea of what the problem is. Again, I don't know if that's something that I can send out to everybody to look at in advance.
No harm in doing that. We'd like us to take a look and think about that.
Okay.
I mean, we talked about road inventory stuff earlier. Would it be helpful to, at least as a bare minimum, send out to the group what I'll call the Wathen legal note from 91 that kind of gives a pretty good primer on why a town should have one, so we can see if there's anything in there that we might want to be looking at moving forward to suggest changes back to MMA?
Brian, that's a good idea. Rebecca, you probably have that on the Maine Townsman online and could share it with commission members.
Yeah, I nominate Ryan to suggest changes to our legal.
I didn't say that, but to review. I don't know. I find it's like anything else. Some things just it's unbelievable, but that was written in 1991.
It's been updated since then, and
Sure.
The roads manual has recently been updated as well. I think it's in its final stages.
Maybe then you're the right person to get it to us, Rebecca, because all I can get to is what's on the public, or not even.
You should be our member.
I can get in that way. Yeah, I can get in that way, but I think
it's intellectual property.
I think you'd have access to the more newer, whatever, updated versions.
But I think it would be helpful to know what towns are getting for advice for how to put together a road inventory, what it looks like, and that's something that everybody here would be interested in seeing.
That I can do. The roads manual I cannot, but.
Understood. Okay, that'd be helpful, Rebecca. Thank you. Anything else for today? Heather, am I leaving anything out?
Not that
Putting
I
you on
can,
the spot.
not that I can think of. The only thing I can think of is now that we have been approved for 12 meetings a year, do we want to start thinking as a commission about maybe having like how EPA and stuff does it, where they'll have the meetings already set up, so they meet the 1st of the month or they meet the 15th of every month. That way your meetings are already there. Obviously, maybe not for this year, but maybe it's something to look at for next year. So that way it's a fixed meeting time. And then everybody knows when the meeting is and whether or not they can attend. It might make it easier on everybody rather than doing the doodle polls and stuff. I don't know. It's just a thought I had.
The thought of doing 10 doodle polls between now and December doesn't really thrill me, so I understand.
That's what I was thinking, yeah.
But I don't know if there's a particular meeting date time that works. Maybe we could suggest that. Maybe the doodle poll is limited to the first, Wednesday, the first Friday, or, morning, afternoon. Try to find out if there's a good time for us all to get together, and then we can just say that this is when we're going to meet. If you can't make it, great, but we'll try to do it when everybody is most likely to attend. Does that make sense?
Yeah.
Okay, so we'll work through Heather to see if we can come up with a standing time for meetings so that we don't have to try to have this discussion every month or every 2 or 3 weeks.
And
Good.
then for the and then the other question I have 2 more questions. For issue 1 and for issue 2 committees, do you want me to do doodle polls for those for like the next few weeks?
Let's try to do that.
Okay.
I'm going to be out the last
May.
half of May, but other than that, I'll be around. So yeah, let's say in about 3 weeks, get together.
And then did you want to set something up for the commission meeting in June, like end of June, to come back together and discuss, or do you want to wait till July?
No, let's do that at the end of June.
Okay. That way I know the doodle polls I'm setting up.
Right. Okay. Sounds good.
Okay. Thank you.
Anything else for today? Well, thank you all for being here. It's good to see everyone, and we'll see if we can get something accomplished this year and sell it to state and local government, and see if we can make some improvements here. All right. Thank you for your time. Thanks.
Thank you.
Everyone.
Bye, everybody.